Hi, and welcome to HPE Discover 2025 from Las Vegas. I'm Ashley Scott from HPE Global Communications. Joining me today are John Frey, Senior Director and Chief Technologist of Sustainable Transformation, and Andrew Wheeler, Senior Vice President and Director of Hewlett Packard Labs. Hi, welcome. Thank you guys for joining us.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, great to be here.
Thank you. Well, John, we'll start with you. We're at Discover. We're on the showroom floor. The energy is incredible.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you're hearing from customers and partners as it relates to IT efficiency and sustainability?
Yeah, everybody's asking questions about agentic AI. For some reason, that seems to be the topic. They're really starting to put those solutions together and trying to figure out how they can drive efficiencies in that. And they're asking the question, is agentic actually less efficient than doing straight inference? And what we're helping them understand is it depends, but we can build those solutions, particularly the agentic solutions that in aggregate are actually even more efficient.
Okay. So, Andrew, what about you? What are you hearing that's maybe different than last year from customers and partners as it relates to efficiency and sustainability?
Yeah, I mean, some of the questions are the same for sure, but definitely you can tell there's a sense of just new questions of where they're at in their AI journey.
Okay.
And so it's everything from what they should be deploying, how do they think about models, agentic AI now is all part of the conversation. So I think just seeing year over year, the maturity in that conversation, you can tell a big difference. So that's probably one of the main things I'm seeing.
That's great. So, Andrew, I know you are speaking here at Discover. Can you give us a little taste on your session? What are the key takeaways
Yeah.
we should expect?
Yeah, well, as you might expect from a lab standpoint, people want to know a little bit about, well, okay, what's kind of coming, what's next. And so I have a talk a little bit on, kind of AI horizons, but specifically with, this growing concern around the energy demands, especially of AI, and just
Sure.
growing concerns around that. And so, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the work that we're doing to help address that, maybe some other trends that we see. And so we'll dive into that at some detail, give some examples, but that'll be the core part of the talk.
Okay, great. John, what about you? What will your session highlight this year? I know you have a tech talk.
We
Tell us
do.
about it.
It's going to be an extension of what we did last year, focusing on the efficiency levers, but really looking at what are some of the changes that have occurred in the last year. Like large language models were getting larger and larger and larger, and suddenly we have much smaller language models with high levels of efficiency because it was designed in from the start. So how do we take advantage of that? And is the robustness of the model and the accuracy of the output still at the same level as some of the larger language models? And then we're also talking to customers about when they're thinking about building AI solutions, how do they optimize for the solution, not just the individual components? Because often when you're optimizing with the individual components, one thing that's optimized more leads to inefficiencies in one of the other things. So how do we help them think solutions and design this in at the start so that they don't deploy an AI solution that then they have to add efficiency to as an afterthought?
Okay, sounds great. It's exciting. Well, so we've covered a little bit about AI sustainability. How does edge computing factor into that? Andrew?
Yeah, so when we think about edge, we kind of classify it in three ways. We have a what we call a light edge, maybe a medium edge, and a heavy edge.
Okay.
But one thing they all kind of have in common, especially when it comes to AI, is, well, it's all about how much of that data, especially inference, how much of that AI model deployment can we put at the edge environment to do a variety of different things. And again, it depends on if you're light, medium, or heavy. And so, we think about it in terms of, well, how do I develop a model? How do I push it to the edge? What I do with the data movement, that's a big part of it as well. So just kind of that entire workflow then becomes, something that we're working on. And, as a company, we certainly have a right to play there.
Sure.
So a lot of fantastic use cases around the edge and doing model deployment there.
Got it. And John, so what are some examples on how IT leaders should be considering deploying solutions at the edge?
It's a great question, and one of the things they have to ask themselves is, are latency a consideration, or are we moving large bits of data from the edge to a more central location, and have we considered the implications of that data movement? That's often unappreciated, that data movement is a heavy energy consumer as well. And so the question then becomes, do we process at the edge and just send the results? So for example, with the spaceborne computer, if you're transmitting data back and forth from something in space, that's a really low speed relative pipe and a very narrow data pipe. So can we instead do all of the AI inferencing and data absorption on the edge and just send back the results of some of those queries versus having to send everything back to the ground, get an answer and send that back up? Same thing is true if you think about a factory where we're instrumenting many more things in a production process. That's the edge. We're gathering all that data. Can we process that more locally right in the factory versus trying to move the data back to a data center someplace and then get an answer? It's much more real time. It's much more effective from an efficiency perspective and even from a latency perspective.
Okay, very good. Interesting. So, Andrew, Hewlett Packard Labs is truly at the forefront of advanced technologies, and I think we even heard Antonio say earlier today it's integral to the advanced technologies that's going to take to change the world. So can you give us a sneak peek of what's to come in the next 12 to 18 months at Hewlett Packard Labs?
Yeah, so a big emphasis we have is, no surprise, it's the application of AI and using AI to help improve AI. So whether it's some of the sustainability challenges, right, the energy efficiency thing, looking at how we deploy things at the edge, because just like John said, well, there's a latency component there, but then there's maybe a low power requirement as well, and so you got to be smart, and that takes a lot of thought on what we do there. But yeah, it's everything from continue to build out the agentic AI story. We heard some of the great examples in the keynote today that looking back a couple of years ago, that's when we first started some of that work, and so it's great to see it now come into production, and we talk about it at an event like this. The physical AI, you're going to hear more and more about how we're applying these agents and even digital twins to help make our liquid cooling infrastructure even more efficient and even more capable in terms of heat reuse and heat recapture. So just a lot of work related to the application of AI and sustainability in particular.
Great, thank you. So John, for IT leaders watching right now, what's next, and what immediate next steps can they take to improve their efficiency and their IT sustainability?
So I think what's coming is smaller, denser infrastructure solutions that have much higher energy consumption and therefore much higher heat shedding. Okay. So liquid cooling, Andrew already mentioned that. How do we use digital twins to even model what that infrastructure would need to look like for highest efficiency? How do we think about where we place that infrastructure so that we can take advantage of efficiencies as well? So for us, when we developed our 5 levers, that's equipment efficiency, energy efficiency, resource efficiency, software efficiency, and finally data efficiency, those 5 levers continue to apply from an AI perspective, and they're actually accelerated because of some of the implications that the applications themselves, the software efficiency, have on overall efficiency. Some of the things that equipment efficiency, running that infrastructure at high levels of utilization can have for doing a tremendous amount of work with the smallest energy footprint. And even the data efficiency, if we're gonna have models that require a tremendous amount of data to train and then tune or use in an inference setting, how do we make sure that that data set has been collected, collated, and cleaned before we start training models so that we get the best output based on the quality of the data input? So I think all of those things are coming together. I think the other dramatic shift that technology leaders are seeing is if they look out at the roadmaps for processors, be they CPUs or GPUs or even accelerators, we're starting to reach the point where many of those processors are no longer qualified to run under air cooling because of the intense heat output that they have, or said the opposite way, the need to cool them to a much better level than air cooling can provide. So the vendors that make those products are actually saying on many of their roadmaps, at this point you must do liquid
They're
cooling.
cutting it off.
So how do they make that transition from ambient air cooling, which has historically been the cooling mechanism in enterprise IT,
Sure.
to this direct liquid cooling? And that's where having Hewlett Packard Labs is so beneficial, because that's the things that Andrew and his team have been working on for years, first in high performance compute and now coming down to mainstream compute. And I think that's one of the powers of HPE, is we can take those technologies, prove them out in one use case or one instance, and then extend those all the way across the portfolio.
Incredible. Well, it's incredible work you both are doing, and we're really excited for your tech talk and your sessions this week at Discover. Thank you both so much for your time. We really appreciate it. Learn more on IT sustainability by catching John's Tech Talk, Efficiency Meets AI, Leading the Way in Sustainable AI Optimization. You can watch the replay at hpe.com/discover. Thank you for joining us.